Let me try this again. Now, you say I don't do the left any favours with how I approach my arguments. I could probably agree that I could use better examples and that I should have kept the bigger picture in view when discussing these issues. You know, the context that I see the war on terror as a bogus attempt to justify American expansionism and militarisation in the Middle East, lobbied for by private interests, including the military-industrial complex and energy giants that have profited massively off of this, and therefore I see legislation that has been brought in on the back of this to be completely bunk. Right, not only the fact that it's not actually keeping Americans safer, that it's actually radicalising more and more people as we go around killing hundreds of thousands of civilians in our attempts to fight Al-Qaeda. So you're actually making things worse. So you're actually radicalising more people against the US, and you're really not helping matters with this war on terror, which has got an ill-defined battlefield, an ill-defined enemy, and it's a bit of a fucking mess all round. I don't think anybody could say it's been a success, really, and I'm not saying that you do either. So that's the bigger context that I should have kept in view, and better examples that I could have used I'll try and put out in this video. But I don't think I've done a disservice to the arguments in the way that you seem to have tried to illustrate, because you continue to conflate matters and misrepresent my positions. So I'll try and mention a couple of them here, although I'm not going to spend too much time ironing out all the kinks. First of all, Skep, what was the point in pointing to the Twitter exchange in which I didn't respond to you, when you then went on to show that we did have a conversation on that same point in your comments section? Second, what was the point in talking about the hypersonic section of the bill that I mentioned? It's nothing to do with indefinite detention. Drones is a worthwhile topic, nothing to do with indefinite detention. Third, you read out the Viva Hamas phrase in that tweet that I put out there as some evidence of me arbitrarily supporting anything Hamas does and thinking that they're groovy guys. No, that tweet clearly, in arguments since then, is trying to point out why the people of Palestine have come to support Hamas's more direct response to Israel's brutal ways. Brutal things that have been done not only to the people of Gaza and Hamas and people that are supporting them, but also, as you pointed out, to the people in the West Bank as well. So that's just one example of the reason why I don't find it difficult to point at Israel and say they're to blame for this situation. And there's other contexts as well that are very interesting to this debate, such as the fact that Israel are responsible for building Hamas up in the first place, with the intent of destabilising the power structures that were forming there, and now they have this radical opposition that justifies the continuation of their brutal activities, even though they're not only visiting those brutal acts upon people in Hamas-controlled areas. So, I'm going to try and bring it back to the core issues here. That of the NDAA being, vague, arbitrary, unconstitutional, and I'm not going to use my arguments this time. I'm going to read from the ruling of Judge Forrest, and I'm sure you're aware of this already. You've been having conversations with people in your comment section about this. So earlier this year, a bunch of people, including people like Noam Chomsky, Daniel Ellsberg, people with far more knowledge on these subjects than you or I, challenged this section in the NDAA that they said was unconstitutional. Now, Judge Forrest agreed that it was, and I'll read from her ruling here. Judge Forrest said that the government did not generally agree or anywhere argue that activities protected by the First Amendment could not subject an individual to indefinite military detention under 1021b2. The First Amendment of the US Constitution provides for greater protection. It prohibits Congress from passing any law abridging speech or associational rights. To the extent that 1021 purports to encompass protected First Amendment activities, it is unconstitutionally overbroad. But First Amendment rights aren't the only constitutional problem with the law. Forrest continues, the due process rights guaranteed by the Fifth Amendment require that an individual understands what conduct might subject him or her to criminal or civil penalties. Here the stakes get no higher. Indefinite military detention, potential detention during a war on terrorism that is not expected to end in the foreseeable future, if ever. The Constitution requires specificity. That specificity is absent from 1021b2. Forrest is particularly dismissive of the government's argument that the issue is none of the court's business and that at most courts can consider individual habeas corpus petitions from already detained prisoners. Forrest says that that argument is without merit and indeed dangerous. If only habeas review is available to those detained under 1021, even US citizens on US soil, core constitutional rights available to criminal matters would simply be eliminated. No court can accept this proposition and adhere truthfully to its oath. So this was, and I'll link to the full ruling. It basically goes on to show that the US, government has not specified exactly what constitutes aiding the enemy. Now let's look at how that accusation has been used by the US in recent times. Now look at Bradley Manning, which is I can't believe I didn't bring this up in the first place. Bradley Manning, the most severe charge that has been levied against him is that of aiding the enemy for the act of leaking information to a media organisation that went ahead and published it. Now if we go by the chat logs that are used as to show that he's admitted what he's done allegedly, now his intention there was clear, and that was to aid the public awareness of what its government was doing so that it can be better informed as to whether or not to support those actions. But the US government is trying to accuse Manning of aiding the enemy. Now he's been held for over 800 days. The legal limit is 120, so it could be said that he's actually been detained, in line with this detention legislation. And so in that ruling, that Judge Forrest did say that the language used in the legislation was unconstitutionally broad, not allowing people to know what crime it is that they've committed in order to be detained under that legislation. It kind of correlates pretty well with what's going on with Manning. Now, of course, as you all know, the Obama administration immediately appealed Judge Forrest's ruling, and it's still being debated in courts. So that's why I haven't said to you that it applies to US citizens, because it's still being established in courts by people with a far greater knowledge on these issues. Now it's not just Manning that we could bring up as an example of where indefinite detention has been applied unjustly. Now I know that you know about this guy's case, and we already discussed this briefly, but this was the case of Adnan Latif. This was a guy that was handed over in Afghanistan and accused of being affiliated to Al-Qaeda or enemy forces. There's no evidence whatsoever of that. Now he was handed over during a period of time where there was a culture of the military was basically offering big rewards for being handed people that were accused of being affiliates of enemy forces. So that led to a situation where people were being handed over for the rewards, no evidence needed or given. And this guy, Adnan Latif, ended up dying in Gitmo, in Guantanamo Bay, even after internal sections of the US government had argued that he should be released, even after Department of Defense and other official entities within the US had recommended him for release. He was still detained in Gitmo, and I think the rationale given was that his home country of Yemen was politically volatile. I mean, really? So you just want to keep him in Gitmo because his home country is politically volatile? Anyway, so there was a culture of people being handed to the US military for rewards, with no evidence needed, required or given, and being detained indefinitely. And it's this application of arbitrary application of indefinite detention that is the issue here, and it could apply to US citizens, and that's something that's been established in court. It's something that's been argued about, and again it seems to be something that correlates quite well with the accusations levied against Bradley Manning of aiding the enemy. So if he's been accused of aiding the enemy by leaking information to a media organisation, it also puts in jeopardy journalists, as we've seen from the case in Yemen. Let me get the guy's name right, because Obama put pressure on Yemen to keep locked up a guy who was who they say is an Al-Qaeda affiliate or aiding the enemy. And the reality of the matter seems to be that he was just a journalist that was talking to members of those forces and doing journalism. So if that can be, let me just get the guy's name, and again I'll link everything that I'm talking about. Trying to find the name of the guy. Abdullah. No, that's not right. I can't find the name of the guy. I can't pronounce it. Abdullah Haider Shay. I can't fucking pronounce his name. Yeah, I'll put links in the lower bar. Yemeni journalist who's not proven to have any ties or aiding the enemy at all. If that is the kind of activity that can be judged to be aiding the enemy, being a journalist talking to these people, that's an unfair definition, really, isn't it? It's really not fair there. So yeah, that's some more context to why this legislation has been judged to have been an unfair application of power there. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say in this video. I'd like to see you, Skep, do one whole long video by yourself talking without any clips, because it's pretty easy to appear authoritative and intelligent when all you've got to do is speak for 20 seconds at a time, and you know, taking bits of mine out of context and then responding to him with glib remarks about my intelligence, which I clearly don't. I'm clearly not devoid of knowledge on these topics, so I think you're overselling that, you know. But yeah, alright guys, again, you know, I'm not concerned with winning YouTube debates. I don't care at all if the, you know, consensus is that I've lost this debate. I really don't care, because it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever to the realities of what's going on out there. And that's what I'm concerned with, is trying to understand that. And I am comfortable with my position on, you know, the with the bogus nature of the war on terror. We've been able to point at Israel and say that it's to blame for the situation there. I'm comfortable with those positions, and it's not. You know, those realities aren't affected by whether or not you think I've made the case perfectly or not. It's still out there. So yeah. Right guys, bye bye.